Just when you thought we were done, we pull you right back in. Tumalip the podcast episode number 12. Yes, we've hit the dozen. Well, I don't have any donuts to celebrate it, but if they were here on this they'd be really tasty. Really tasty right now. Tumalip the podcast episode number 12. Sorry about that. I hit the mic cord and it just hit this little blue bobble thing. Actually, was kind of cool. But again, as I pointed out, it took a while because number one, I was too gosh darn lazy to do this, and number three, wait a minute, that's three. I didn't say three. Did I say three? I said three. I said two things. I meant two things. I'm sorry. I haven't done this in a while, so I'm rusty. Two things that I noticed. Number one, I was too dang lazy to do anything about getting this thing back on there as soon as possible. And number two, I kinda got caught up in the fact that my podcast might have been screwed because I didn't have the theme music and I didn't have my backdrop picture. So that's why we did not do it as soon as we did. But now, we're back. We're here. And it's certainly better now than it was a few months ago where I was stuck without, still a low-budget production anyway. I've gone back to using the bland white backdrop for my Tumalip the podcast, and we're back to crummy audio quality, as you can tell on this. I'm using Audacity on a Windows 7 Home Premium. Get that plug-in. Windows, very good computer. I have a new Lenovo, but it doesn't have as nearly good audio recording quality, and doesn't allow me to upload it to my computer. And I don't have Final Cut Pro. I'm so disappointed about that. I don't have Final Cut Pro on my computer. I have a Windows, so I don't have Final Cut Pro. So I can't edit the way I used to, and I can't put videos in the way I used to, can't put audio in the way I used to. I literally have to put the audio in layer by layer on Windows Live Movie Maker, and it is an absolute pain in my rump, and I don't want to do that. But now I have the strength and courage to make a podcast about it, and I'm just ranting about Windows and what they're not doing in the world of electronics. So screw you, Bill Gates. Getting back on topic here, it's been a fun last few months, but I'm only really focused on what's going on in the last week or so. The NFL kicked off. Tom Brady's back, finally. The Ryder Cup just happened, and boy, am I so happy for Davis Love. Gets the win for Arnold Palmer. And Arnie, we know you're watching somewhere up there in that big golf course in the sky. We love you, buddy, and we miss you dearly. Funny thing is, I never knew Arnold Palmer personally, but I got to play on one of his design courses. And for anyone who doesn't know it, I'm a big golfer. I love golf. I mean, if I had a choice between being a football announcer, a basketball announcer, a hockey announcer, or a golf announcer, my golf would definitely be in my top 5 bucket list. And I would love to play courses like St. Andrews and Royal Troon and Whistling Straits, Bethpage, Pebble Beach, Spyglass Hill, all those courses, but nothing really comes close to that than the Arnold Palmer course at Turtle Bay. If you haven't seen the course, if you're a golfer and you haven't played the course, you absolutely must play it. It is a beautiful course, beautiful Scottish Link style course, with a little bit of intrepidation needed, especially on the 17th hole. There's about 1 million acres of sand out there. And on the 9th hole now, there's a new half-acre bunker of sand that goes across a ditch in the middle of the fairway. And when it's not a ditch, it's a water hazard. So you kind of have to be careful of where you go with your ball on the 9th green, on the 9th fairway. My lowest score I ever shot as a golfer, by the way, was a 95. And for anyone that says, oh, that was good, a par on a normal course is usually 72. So, if I was playing, say, a tournament or something at Turtle Bay, and I shot a 95, I would probably be cut on the first day of the tournament. They would probably say to me, you are not fit to be a golfer. You just pack up your clubs and get the heck out. You are no longer welcome here. By the way, Jay Onright, one of my good friends, is probably a better golfer than me. I once saw him golfing on Snapchat, and his swing, I tell you, I'm gonna ask him one of these days if he can come back on before I leave, and I want to see his golf swing because it is smooth as silk. It almost looks verbatim to my swing, except it's a little bit more on tempo and on point. Okay, nobody knows what I'm talking about when I say on tempo and on point, except probably golfers that are listening to this podcast. So the few people out there that are listening to this thing, it's pretty much a done deal now that this Ryder Cup was not only big for the United States in general, but it was big for the PGA of America. For anyone that doesn't know, the Ryder Cup has been absolutely dominated by Europe the last few years. And pretty much there is no more room for error for the United States team this year. If they lost a fourth straight Ryder Cup, they would probably just concede the Ryder Cup every single year from now on. But the U.S. goes out there and they leave a bag of Arnold Palmer, its original captaincy from 1975, on the first tee on the first day of foursomes, which is, by the way, foursomes is alternate shot match play. So you alternate, so you have 4 players, 2 for each team, 2 for Europe, 2 for USA, and they alternate shots to see who can get the better shots, and whoever has the lowest score wins the hole. And they go 1 up, 2 up, 3 up, 4 up, 5 up, 6 up, so on and so forth. The highest you can go is 10 up, I think, on a course. You cannot go any higher than 10 up on a course. And by the way, if you forfeit a match, it's 10 and 8. You forfeit a 10 up match with 8 holes to play is how it's marked. It should be just marked. I always laugh at this. It should be 18 and 17 up, but you know that's physically impossible. You can't just win 1 hole and a hole in 1 on 18 holes. So they leave this bag out there, and I tell you what, I wake up the next morning and there has never been a stronger support by those U.S. fans. Maybe they took it a little bit too far, but that'll be the subject of the opening rant. And by the way, I'm sorry I do not have the opening rant intro anymore. I forgot about it at school, and unfortunately I'm not going to get it back. So unfortunately the opening rant will just be unintroed and unsullied by musical, I don't know, what would you call it, musical bullies or whatever, I don't know. That'll be a subject later. That's also what happened in the Ryder Cup. The final score in that one, the U.S. was up 4-0 after the first session of foursomes. Europe took 3 out of the 4 balls in the afternoon, and the U.S. was leading 5-3. Then in the morning foursomes on Saturday, the United States was leading 6.5 to 5.5 after Europe took 2 of the 3 matches and then halved the other match. By the way, a half in the Ryder Cup or President's Cup, either way, is a half a point. So you could conceivably have a score like 11.5 to 11.5, and you could conceivably have a score of 14 to 14, and I'll get to the specifics of it later. People probably don't even know what I'm talking about at this point, those that just joined us. And it was a likely fact at that point that Europe was going to come back and win. Because if anybody had watched the Ryder Cup of 2012, in that, I call it the meltdown at Medina, because I'm an American golf fan, and I sincerely, without a doubt, whenever it comes to like the Ryder Cup, President's Cup, I don't care. The U.S. dominates President's Cup play. That is never close. Whenever it comes to Ryder Cup play, I'm sorry to say to any European fans that are listening, but I just hate Europe when it comes to the Ryder Cup. Whenever I hear Ryder Cup and whenever I hear Europe in the same sentence, just flips a switch in my head and I hate it. Because I'm just sick and tired of hearing about Europe. It's like, why can't we talk about the U.S.? And then everyone says, oh yeah, because the U.S. hasn't won in like some odd years. We've won. We used to dominate that thing. The first Ryder Cups, Great Britain was no match for us, and then they finally changed it in 75 when they finally said, hey, Great Britain and Ireland lost by 10. This is not a serious competition anymore. So they bring in continental European players, and then Europe starts to filter in, you know. Then they start to get under our skin a little bit. And no more so, I think, than at the Belfry, the Brabazon course, back in 1989, I think, in that infamous Seve versus Zinger feud. That really took it into the 1991 Ryder Cup, which was then called the War on the Shore. And Bernard Longer missed that 6-foot putt, which I'm sure still haunts him to this day. Uh, and then, of course, you take it into consideration that the U.S. went to the Belfry, back to Brebazon. It's spelled B-R-A, brah, B-R-A-B-A-Z-O-N, course. The Belfry. That's in England. That's in England. So that was the last time the U.S. won the Ryder Cup in Europe, and the last time they retained it in 93. Then they lost 3 straight in 95, 97, and then finally won in 99 in the Miracle at Brookline, where they came back to win 14.5 to 13.5. And ironically, 13 years later, it was a reversal of fortune. The U.S. was up 10-6 and ended up collapsing at Medina, which I call the meltdown of Medina, but if you're a European fan, you will call it the miracle at Medina. And then things started to get a little bit heated at the 2014 Ryder Cup press conference. Now, we don't have the audio of that, because again, I don't want to fight with Windows Movie Maker. So Phil Mickelson basically said, we need to figure out a way to better organize this thing, because it seems like we're picking a captain out of nowhere. So the U.S. gets together, PGA of America gets together, and they create a task force. And they select Davis Love III as the captain. I'll get more on that in a second. And so I think to myself, this guy collapsed at the Ryder Cup. This guy has no point being there to give us another chance to lose. Because if I look at recent history, Davis Love III is now synonymous with that meltdown in Medina. I seriously did not trust Love's competitiveness, and because I didn't trust his gamesmanship. And because you look at his picks, you look at what Paul Azinger put out. Anthony Kim, J.B. Holmes, Boo Weekley, Dustin Johnson was not on that team. He was on this winning Ryder Cup team. Ryan Moore wasn't on that team. Phil was on that team. Jim Furyk was on that team. They had proven winners in that 2008 Ryder Cup team. But now you bring in Dustin Johnson, Brandt Snedeker, J.B. Holmes is back, Brooks Koepka, Dustin Johnson, Jimmy Walker, Matt Kuchar, Phil Mickelson. These guys don't have any consistency. So I was a firm, steadfast believer that Europe was going to blow us out by at least 9 or 10 points, and then take back the cup, and then they'll rub it in our faces in a few years in France. But what happened next was beyond my imagination. Arnold Palmer passes away, and then this thing just flips right on its head. 4-0, 5-3, 6.5 to 5.5. Then it's 9.5 to 6.5. And I just thought, oh my gosh, they can really do this. But then I look back at recent history. Wait a minute, we were up 9.5 to 6.5. Add a half point more, that's 10 to 7. Or subtract a half point from Europe and add another half point to us. It's 10-6. It could happen again. But then I think I just saw two of the greatest matches in Ryder Cup history. Patrick Reed, the Barclays champion, dueling Rory McIlroy, the FedEx Cup champ, to the death, literally, and succumbing to him 1-up. McIlroy succumbing to Reed 1-up. It goes to 10.5 to 7.5, and it's at that point I think, and I see a lot of red on that scoreboard. It's like, that's it. That's all we needed. This is our anchor match right here. We don't need ZJ to beat Matt Fitzpatrick. We don't need Danny Willett to lose to Brooks Koepka. In fact, heck, we didn't even need a strong effort from Phil. And by the way, go back on YouTube, look up that Phil Mickelson and Sergio Garcia match in the Ryder Cup. It was one of the best matches I've ever seen in a Ryder Cup. 58 combined, 19 birdies. It was just memorable. It was a memorable match I'm sure no one will ever forget. And the U.S. wins 17-11, their biggest margin of victory since 1981, their biggest margin of victory at home since 1979. But ironically, the last time the U.S. was up 4-0 and swept the foursomes, they won the Ryder Cup, and their captain, I thought, was the greatest irony ever. Someone pointed this out before anyone else did. Arnold Palmer was the captain of that team that swept the opening foursomes in 75. I thought that was the greatest irony ever in golfing history. And then I watched the memorial service for Arnold Palmer. They flew his jet over this morning, and when the bagpipes play Amazing Grace, I don't know what it does. It plays on your heartstrings. It just made me want to cry, because And everyone knows I'm not an emotional person. Doesn't think I'm an emotional person anyway. But I am an emotional person. I hurt. And I especially was hurting for when Arnie passed away. Because I just thought, my gosh, this is the guy that built the course down at Turtle Bay that I played on. And now I'm never going to get to know him. But then the pastor says, in the final prayer before the memorial service ends, they had it covered across Sports Center. Fox Sports 1 was covering it this morning. Golf Channel was covering it. Anyone who knew Arnold Palmer, David Faraday, Dan Hicks, Kelly Tillman, Rich Lerner, Frank Nobilo, Brandel Chambly, David Duvall, President Obama, even. I mean, the list of dignitaries that know and knew what Palmer does for the sport and for the world, it's mind-boggling. And I just felt so bad for everybody. It's like, we not only lost a golfer, we lost a father and a friend. That's how I stand on Arnie's passing, and that's why I tweeted out, and most everybody tweeted out, American golf fans. This is why we all tweeted out after that this Ryder Cup win was definitely for Arnie. And so, if I can bring it all back to a hilt here, the United States is a country that will be inspired whenever we are kicked down. And the United States lost 3 Ryder Cups in a row. Twice now in the last 3 years. They won in 2008 and 2016. But this one might be the sweetest of all time. Because this one was definitely for Arnie, and this one was for the United States of America. To get us away from the distractions, police violence, police brutality, excessive force, racial divide. Everyone's looking at our country right now saying, nah, you guys might be on the verge of breaking up. We're not on the verge of breaking up, people. We're on the verge of becoming stronger as a nation and as a country. Because I'll tell you one thing. If you're an American, whether you're a Ryder Cup fan, you're a FIFA World Cup fan, you're an NCAA tournament fan, you're an NCAA college football playoff fan, you live for these kinds of moments. And these moments are the ones that will always count and the ones that will always stick in your mind. So everyone, raise a glass, get some iced tea and lemonade, and raise your glass to Arnold Palmer. Because this Ryder Cup and every championship this year, make it for him. Because he is the one that brings all the fans of every sport, whether it was at basketball games, football games, golf, everyone will be together because of what Arnie has done. Because, in truth, whether you're a golf fan or not, we are all members of Arnie's army. That was an emotional tribute right there to Arnold Palmer, our good friend, who passed away earlier this month at the age of 87. His memory lives on. It will always live on. Will never die. And hey, for everyone that knew him and is reaching that age, look on the bright side. When your pain and suffering's over on this earth, Arnie will be there to greet you at the gates of heaven. And God does know that he'll be there to greet you. So, we had some good fun with the Ryder Cup this week. NFL football is back and is getting into that time of the year where 7-1-3 teams now in the NFC are still somehow all in the hunt, including my beloved 49ers. You feel no pressure at all right now, do you? If you're an NFL fan that's 1-3? If you're 1-3 right now, you have a 14% chance of making the playoffs. But there's 7-1-3 teams in the NFC. So conceivably, all 7 of those NFC teams could end up being in the hunt by the end of the year. That's why nobody is safe from this. And that's why all the numbers are just statistics. The numbers are really just statistics. Because the numbers, as far as I'm concerned, don't mean anything until you get out there and you actually put it to work on the turf or on the grass, wherever the heck you play. So, I think because of the the parity in NFL football and college football really is that you could be literally on the outside looking in for the college football playoff. You could literally be the number 17 team ranked in the college football playoff, and you could still get into a New Year's Six bowl just by winning a Group of Five championship game. I mean, look at Houston. Houston was number 18 in the country at the time of playing in the American Conference Championship last year against Tulsa. They ended up winning, and they went to the Peach Bowl, and look what they did against Florida State. We take a look at the BCS. Look at the parity there. Utah, Boise State, TCU, who else? Connecticut, Northern Illinois, Hawaii even. You know, all those teams, these so-called AQ, and I'm using AQ, automatic qualifying schools in quotations, they don't necessarily have to be these big schools. I mean, the playoff is always going to be big schools. I mean, that's just the way it's going to be. You're always going to have your Alabama. You're always going to have your Auburn, your Florida State, Oregon. Oregon's not doing so good this year. I don't know why. You're going to have Washington. You're going to have Houston, Oklahoma. Oklahoma's not doing good either. Tennessee, Texas A&M. All the big schools right now are doing good. But you look at the strength of their schedules compared to, say, Hawaii's or San Jose State's schedule. Hawaii has scheduled 3 Power 5 teams. California, Michigan, Arizona. All 3 of these teams beat Hawaii by an average margin of about 41 to 21. Do the math. You take a look at Appalachian State. They played Tennessee on the road. They played Miami of Florida. And they're going to play a lot more difficult teams. Yes, the Sun Belt is a weak conference. It's a relatively weak conference. There's going to be 4 FCS transitioning teams next year. Appalachian State, Georgia Southern, Georgia State, Coastal Carolina, and Florida Atlantic are all in the Sun Belt. They are all 5 of those are former FCS schools. And you know what? In a few more years, you take a look at the parity in these playoffs. North Dakota State, I mean, they're an FCS team. They could conceivably get into the college football playoff and conceivably challenge for a New Year's Six berth. Look at what they did against Northern Iowa. North Dakota State has won 6 straight games against FBS teams. 6 straight games. So somebody tell them, whoever's scheduling your opponents, tell them not to schedule North Dakota State, because those guys are good. I tell you what. Anyway, I'm getting off topic. But again, I think realistically, the playoff this year is going to be a lot weaker. Because, number one, Oklahoma is dead to rights out of the playoff. I mean, they lost the playoff berth as soon as they lost to Houston on Labor Day weekend. Ole Miss is definitely out of the playoff. Florida State is almost certainly out. Tennessee maybe needs to win against Texas A&M on Saturday. UCLA is probably dead out. Stanford probably lost it against Washington. You watched the game against Washington. They got destroyed on Friday, 44-6. But then we get to the meat of the playoff. Now, who's the first 4 in? I mean, Louisville maybe is out, but maybe they might get in. Arkansas probably needs to beat Alabama to get in. And if, by the way, Arkansas beats Alabama, they're going to take a huge leap up into the rankings. Utah, they're probably out. Utah probably doesn't have a big chance to begin with. All these small teams, and you know what? I'm going to say it right now. My first top 4 in the playoff are probably going to be Alabama, Louisville, Clemson, and Houston. Because Ohio State is not strong. You look at their schedule. They played Tulsa. They blew out Tulsa. They destroyed Rutgers. They blew out Bowling Green State. Ohio State doesn't really deserve to be in the playoff this year. Along with some of the other teams, you know, your Tennessees, Texas A&Ms, Washington probably not going to get in. Houston will likely get in for uncontrollable reasons. Maybe Greg Ward, Tom Herman, whatever. But obviously, there's parity in this college football season this year because a lot more difficult games were scheduled. I mean, you look at the opening weekend. You had USC against Alabama. That was a laugher. Oklahoma got upset by Houston. Ole Miss blew a 28-point lead against Florida State. That almost certainly dashed their hopes for the playoff. There was a lot of tough games this time around because the committee is not looking at your team. It's not looking at your team. It's looking at your schedule now. So that's why they schedule all these tough teams. That's why you got to schedule an Oklahoma. That's why you got to schedule a Houston, a Tulsa, an Ohio State, and Michigan. That's why Hawaii schedules all these tough teams so they can get money. That's why they need it. They need the game so they can get money. But you look at the games against California, against Arizona, against Michigan, they scrapped to the very last snap. There was no giving up in that team. I mean, you look at the plays Hawaii made against Cal. If it wasn't for those 3 turnovers they had, Hawaii might have actually beaten them. So, but it's all a case of coulda, woulda, shoulda now. And unfortunately, that's what Hawaii fans have to live with for the next 5 years or so. They're doing great, by the way. They beat Nevada on Saturday. So I hit the mic cord. That's the 3rd time I hit the dang thing. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry if you hear a little bit of a background noise in this, because the air conditioner is running in the background, and if you heard a big flop, that means I just hit the mic cord, and I just made everyone's ears go out for just 5 or seconds. So yeah, we covered the Ryder Cup. Ryder Cup was great. Arnie, we miss you. College football is certainly becoming a more hotter topic. The NFL, really don't care about that now because it's not really the meat of the season yet. We're only at the quarter pole of the NFL season. MLB postseason, you're probably wanting me to talk about MLB. I don't do baseball. That's about it. I don't do baseball. I don't like baseball. I don't like following it for some reason. But I just have this like mutual hatred for baseball. You guys can probably calculate the math that I have a mutual hate for baseball because I don't watch it. But although I do follow the Atlanta Braves, not as closely as some of the people down in the South would. But there's one thing I did follow earlier this week. 2 things that got under my skin. The Odell Beckham situation that we've been watching unfold for the last 2 weeks or so. And by the way, go on thedawdle.com and you can go see my articles that I write. I write for a blog now. A good friend of mine, AJ Maluyo, go follow him on Twitter. He does this great blog about sports and other living things. He does about reviews for restaurants, about local places you want to eat here in Honolulu, and he enlisted me to write the sports column. And I'm going to write about this sometime in the next couple of weeks. Is this developing taunting situation in the NFL? Is there becoming too many taunting penalties in the NFL? And are we maybe taking it too far? Well, here's my take on it. This is the first part of my opening rant. The second part is the Ryder Cup fans. I'll get to that later. So, this taunting situation is getting a little bit out of control for me personally. Because, number one, when the NFL instituted the rule to penalize people that taunt twice and then throw them out, similar to the college game, which is now being strictly enforced in the college game. They're cracking down on that. Maybe we're getting a little bit too overeager about taunting penalties. And it seems like everything that ranges from, a spike to getting in someone's face, walking over a guy, that is classified, quote unquote, using quotations, as taunting penalties. I mean, it's like, where are we going with football? I mean, are we really now turning the NFL into the so-called no-fun league? I mean, yes, it's supposed to be about the players. I mean, you watch the players. You want to watch the players, but you don't want to see them celebrate. I mean, Antonio Brown, I won't even say what he did for fear that children might be listening to this. But then you look at what Doug Baldwin did in Super Bowl 49. They actually had to cut away from what he did with the football. And if you want to see what he did with the football, go on YouTube and look up his celebration from Super Bowl 49 because that was an absolutely disgusting thing he did. You look at Randy Moss, who shot the moon to the crowd at Lambeau Field all those years ago in that wild card playoff game. And then you have the Josh Norman Odell Beckham situation last fall where they had the big old scrap. I mean, maybe we are getting a little too far with the taunting, but at a certain point, if you're a player, there's got to be that fine line where you just cross that line and you need the flag. So I'm kind of like, I know I'm kind of like contradicting my statement, but I'm going to make it very clear. Yes, the NFL is getting overeager with these taunting calls, but at some point, you're going to have to draw the fine line of what is taunting and what is not taunting. I mean, you could call a spike not taunting. You can call celebrating with the crowd not taunting, such as the Lambeau Leap, the Levi's Leap at Levi's Stadium. You could also call the Dirty Bird a taunt as well. But at some point, as a referee, there's a fine line between taunting and just celebrating with your teammates. So yes, the NFL is getting overeager with these penalties, but I think it's brought about a new light on the players, is that the players are just showboating, are just big show-offs. They're making it theatrical now. So everybody has their own opinion on this, and so everybody's got, this is good, this is bad, this is not good, this is really not good. But the NFL is going to have to come to a compromise at some point that, okay, this is taunting, this is not taunting. That's all they have to do. This is taunting, this is not taunting. Now go out there, play your game, and just make it happen. That's all you need to do. There is no better way to enforce a rule than to just, get it out of the way by just saying, this is taunting, this is not taunting. Now go play the game, and don't screw around. Make some money for our league. Because you know how Roger Goodell is just stuck up, pent up, and money bag, carpet bag. I don't know. I can't tell. Maybe he is a money bag. Maybe maybe he sleeps on money like Birdman. Not Birdman, the action hero, but Birdman, the rapper. Birdman, who, if you want to watch it, go back on YouTube and look up his interview with Dan Le Batard. Is highly questionable. He did an interview and he said he literally sleeps on money as a joke. But I digress. So my rant this month, if you've heard about it, if you're a golf fan, now we're getting into golf. This is really turning into a golf podcast. I like this. If you heard about it, the Ryder Cup fans are getting loose. I mean, like, really loose. And Rory McIlroy, I think, put this perfectly. If quote, he was a spectator in the Ryder Cup, he would drink a lot of beers before 10 in the morning, too. You have to understand that these Ryder Cup fans get to the course at around 6 a.m. to get some seats. I mean, that first tee isn't unlike any other experience you'll have in golf. So these people, quote unquote, are out there at about 5 or 6 in the morning, and they're drinking beer already at 7, 8 in the morning. It's a liquid breakfast. And by the way, if I refer to anything as liquid breakfast or liquid lunch, that means it's probably coming from, booze. So they're already having a liquid breakfast, and then they have a liquid lunch at around 12, and then they go right back out there for afternoon floorball or afternoon foursomes or the last half of the singles matches. They're already drunk as heck. I mean, you look at them; their faces are red. Their facial expressions are their eyes are kind of squinted. They're kind of staggering around the place. They are literally the drunkest people in golf. Those people at the Ryder Cup. And yes, sometimes they're gonna say some things like, I think it was one of the comments was, Rory, you can go do something to something that has to do with the grapefruit. I don't want to say what the grapefruit means because I fear the kids might be listening to this again. What else was I going to say? Oh yeah, because sometimes the fans can cross the line and call somebody names. There's name calling. There's slurs handed down. But Rory took this, I think, a little bit too seriously. So what happened was Rory McIlroy heard that comment of go do something with the grapefruit and ended up pointing the fan out to security, and the guy was quickly thrown out. So it was good on his part. And during the week, there were some idiots in the crowd, and the Americans and European fans just pointed at the guy and said, get him out of here, because we don't want that guy here. But Rory then said, quote, the fans are getting a little too rowdy, and I wish they would do something about it. Now, seriously, the Ryder Cup is a spirit of the game. Sportsmanship and gamesmanship. You are playing it for national pride, for your pride and the pride of your team. You are not playing it for your country's pride, apparently, is what they're saying. Because Samuel Ryder, who was an Englishman, by the way, uh, created this out of the spirit of the game. And now, there are some infamous instances where the game was played out of line with Samuel Ryder's abilities, which was in 91 at Brookline, when not at Brookline, that was Kiowa Island in South Carolina, where they had the infamous war words afterwards, the Sevy and Zinger feud, uh, Tony Jacklin and Jack Nicklaus concession in 1989 at the Belfry. I mean, you look at all these cases of European players, then you get to 99. 99 when Justin Leonard hold that long putt to win back the cup for the United States, and then everyone stepped on, or allegedly somebody stepped on Jose Maria Olazabal's line. That's the same thing that happened in 2010. I mean, Graham McDowell made that amazing birdie putt that I still think would have missed wide had somebody not stomped their feet and moved it in on accident. That won the cup back for Europe. But you look at it, they stormed the green and they stepped on our lines after the Graham McDowell made that amazing putt. You look at Glen Eagles, they ran onto the green. Medina in 2012, the Europeans ran onto the green, their fans ran onto the green while we were still trying to putt. So here's my message to Rory McIlroy and the European fans. You guys are absolutely no different. In fact, you guys are even worse than our fans. I mean, the European fans are way, way worse than the American fans. Those fans cheer, they will call you names, and they'll call you out, the European fans. And sometimes what Patrick Reed did to get under their skin, he did the little shushing motion thing back in 2014 at Glen Eagles, which I thought was pretty awesome. Yet still, we're playing this in the spirit of Samuel Ryder. So to the fans of the Europeans and the Americans, let's just all stop it already. Stop being childish and just play the game like we're supposed to. Play the games in the spirit of Samuel Ryder. Cheer for country with passion, but do it. But do the heckling at the right time. Don't do it out of line where security can point you out and get you out of there. Do it with everybody else, but do it all the while with class. That's all you need to do. And I'm in no way condoning this kind of behavior at Ryder Cups. You could be as loud as you want. You could cheer for missed putts or bunker shots or Europeans or Americans hitting shots into the water as loud as you want. But when it gets to heckling, that's when I have a real problem with it. Because, number one, the Europeans are just taking it on the chin, and they're just saying, oh, because I just believe they're just being salty. They're just mad that they lost the Ryder Cup. But honestly, can you really entrust a 46-year-old who's really not experienced the Ryder Cup before for almost 10 years, in Darren Clark? He front-loaded all his players to get off to a fast start, something that Jose Maria Olazabal did back in 2012 in Medina, and did with great success. But this isn't 2012. This isn't Medina. You don't have the players. You look at the U.S. roster, almost everybody was over 25 years old. Look at the European roster, most everybody was under 23. Chris Wood, Andy Sullivan, Matt Fitzpatrick, Thomas Peters, they were all under 25 years old. Rory McIlroy, Martin Keimer, Sergio Garcia, all three of those guys were over 25. So I think it's really putting pressure on them on the back end of things. So that's why I feel that you have to intersperse the players throughout the lineup. You have to make sure that you have a level lineup so that your best players, some of your best players are at the beginning, some of them in the middle, and some of them in the end. That's how I feel about it. And again, as for the fans, let's just cheer with passion and just do something out of the spirit that Samuel Ryder would like us to have. Please, for my sake. So we actually talked a lot about the Ryder Cup here on this one, and was fun. It was a lot of fun to do. So as for what's coming up, again, so what's coming up next month is I don't know. This might actually be the final podcast for a while if it is in November. Uh, because I'm leaving on my religious mission in just over a month. And I don't know if I'm going to have another podcast before I leave. So if this is the last one for a while, it probably won't be till probably next year or 2 years from now that this thing will restart. And again, if this thing does restart, and it will restart, if I don't have another podcast before I leave, then it's going to be episode 13 coming soon in another couple of years or so. So you'll have to put on hold that. And every day will be a countdown until I return for sure. It was a great couple of weeks. It was absolutely awesome. Had a great weekend. By the way, my mom has been asking a lot about one of my classmates, Kelly, over the last couple of months. Now again, I don't know why, but it's not like we're both into sports or anything. Well, she's into basketball, I also into basketball, but we like different teams. And frankly, I just don't think it's ever going to work, honestly. She keeps asking about her, and maybe it's because I'm single. I don't know why, but it just gets under my skin sometimes whenever she asks about when are you going to get a girlfriend? When are you going to get a girlfriend? I don't know. I just don't know. I don't. So some days I wish she would just stop asking me about it and stop trying to. She actually told me last night. She actually told me that she knows my uncle's Uncle Jarrett. She said that I should start dating their daughter. It's like, I'm not dating their daughter and have Uncle Jarrett as my father-in-law late for everything, making an excuse. I don't want that as an example for my kids. Besides, what if she is my cousin? I don't want to do that. I mean, she could conceivably be my cousin off a DNA test, so I'm gonna try and avoid that. So I would much rather go to college and find my girlfriend rather than just stay at home and do it rather than just find a family member who does have one and I'll just do it myself. I don't care. I mean, I really don't care. That's how I feel. Maybe it's not for my benefit, but maybe it's for other people's benefits because, as we all know, it is that time for people to start hooking up with each other again because it's Halloween and it's the holidays and it's Christmas, it's Thanksgiving. But I really don't want to do that right now. I really don't want to deal with it. That's the problem. Speaking of the holidays, that means Thanksgiving football is coming soon and the NBA season is going to start soon. Oh boy. Check out my articles on the Doddle.com because next coming weeks I'm going to have my season prediction article for NBA basketball, and I'm also going to be writing stuff for NHL hockey over the next couple of months. But of course I'm going to be leaving in the next couple of months, so that will make things a little more difficult. I'm going to head off to call the coach with new UH football coach Nick Rolovich because I really haven't seen him in a while, and if I may, let's close out this podcast with one good story about the one time I met Nick Rolovich. So, back in 2009, I went to a spring practice for UH football. And that was the days when they were running the run and shoot. Now they're running the spread option, the run heavy spread option, and they're using it with great success. So Rolo was working with the QBs, and that time he was working with Bryant Moniz, who's now in Calgary. We actually went to go see him play in Calgary as the backup quarterback. He's in with the jumbo package. For those who don't know, the jumbo package in Canadian football is the short yardage situations, like 3rd and 1, 3rd and inches, 2nd and inches, and they sneak and they get a big push and they sneak the quarterback forward. So that's the games that I love going to, and that's the games I love watching. I love watching Canadian football. Go BC Lions. So anyway, I'm off topic. I digress. So Rolo was working with the quarterbacks, and we get to the end of the practice. Then I meet a couple guys, like KHON's Rob DeMello. Shout out to him. Kanoa Leahy. No, Kanoa wasn't there. His father, Jim Leahy. For those living in Hawaii, everyone knows Jim Leahy from this calls in UH basketball, such as Hawaii wins the Rainbow Classic, or that regional semi in 2006 when UH beat USC, when he shouted Hawaii is going to the finals. Those kinds of calls. Uh, yeah, I just love that guy. He was there with Chuck Leahy, his dad, and you know at that age, Chuck is really getting up there. He's really sitting on his heels as far as the chair is concerned. Love that guy to death. Um, he comes up, and then we get his autograph, and I get their autograph, and then I ended up running out towards row, and then ended up running into the players. That I'll never forget this. The players it's spring practice. They're all lagging behind. They look like they're all beaten up to death. They're all exhausted. And so I just tell them, come on, we gotta get going. And I'm an 11-year-old kid, so they don't take me seriously. But they did, some of them. And they all started laughing. It's like, who is this kid? And it's like, but of course, college guys, they always know how to have fun with kids. And Rolo ends up coming up to me and he brings me over to the quarterbacks. And then, at the time, the UHQB was Greg Alexander, and he was backed up by Bryant Moniz, and that was really the only backups we had at that time, because Steele Jantz was never got a snap with UH, and of course, you know how the story goes in that 2009 season. Alexander starts the first three, gets hurt in game 3. Moniz comes in, plays absolutely miserable the first couple of games, and really turns it around on that 4-game winning streak. He ends up becoming UH's #1 quarterback the next year, and ends up taking them to the Hawaii Bowl. So really, the moral of that story is that's where I got my first love of Nick Rolo, for what Rolo did. If I can close out one thing, Rolo, like Arnold Palmer, is a player's player. He's a coach's coach. He's a man's man. He's a great friend. He's a community guy. He knows how to. He's there for the players. He treats them like family, and that's what Arnie did. I'm bringing this all back around. Arnold Palmer and Nick Rolovich are kind of like brothers of each other. They both know how to have fun. They both have time for everyone, and they make the community part of their plan. You see what Arnie does. You see what Rolo did with the Live Aloha Play Warrior thing. You see what Arnie did with his children's hospital and for women and babies. And, those two are family people. They're family guys. They treat the players like family. Arnie treated his fans like family, like he knew them, like he was their brother, sister, or son, or daughter. He treated everyone with respect. Rolo treats everyone with respect. And I think that's the model that all coaches should learn to live by, such as the models of Arnold Palmer and Nick Rolovich. And so, the one thing I'll never forget, this has been always in my head, whenever I go out, there's always 3 words that come to my mind whenever I think of Rolo. Shoot to kill. Because this is why. You have a goal, you would get it in your crosshairs, you shoot to kill. You take down that goal, and you make believers of everyone that didn't think could believe in you. And I'll never forget this. His pregame speech on Saturday night. Oh, it was golden. So, the pregame speech basically goes, he refers to the Warriors, the teams, his team, and he refers to the coaches, the analysts for ESPN, and the players. ESPN analysts say, they whisper into their ear, "You cannot withstand the storm." And the Warriors whisper back, "I am the storm." Everyone know, the Fairweather fans come up to the players and say, "You cannot withstand the storm." And the Warriors say back, "I am the storm." And finally, Rolo goes, "These Warriors don't get it, so I'll just bang it into their heads." And he bangs on the grate, like, and he says, "Warriors, you cannot withstand the storm." And the Warriors yelled back, "I am the storm." I just thought that was so awesome, because that was the time that you could really feel that UH football was back to prominence. Just like how Arnie brought golf to prominence, and just like how college football will be soon brought to prominence by a mid-major school called Houston. More on that next month. This is Tumalip, the podcast. This is Alexander Tumalip. Glad to be back. Enjoyed having time with you this month. Have a great month, everyone. Happy Halloween. And please, raise a glass to right now. Not Bud Light, but Arnold Palmer's memory. And please, be like Arnold, because we are all members of an army that is like no other.